Hello, and thank you for joining the presentation of the Brandywine Heights Area School District budget for the 2015-2016 school year. What I'd like to talk about today in this budget presentation is the budget timeline, the expenditures and revenues of the school district, including what budget process started in January and where the school board decisions ended up as we move toward the final approval of the budget. We'd also like to talk about the issues that are impacting the school district budget. So we'll talk about PSERS, which is the retirement system. We'll talk about debt service, long-term financial sustainability of our school district, the overall enrollment and what that's looking like. We'd also like to talk about the fund balance, which is the savings account for the school district, and what the options are for the school board as we move forward. This outlines the budget meetings to date. We actually start the budget process way back in the fall of the start of the school year. So the school year starts in September. By November, we're already starting the budget discussions. There was a public meeting held on November 17th to discuss the budget process for the upcoming school year. We actually start this budget process because of the Act 1 index, which is a limit that's set on the taxes that are allowed to be raised by a school district. Because of that, we have to have a preliminary budget during the January and February time frame. So all the building budgets, department budgets have to be submitted and calculated during the end of December to be able to prepare that budget for the school board review in January and February. After that, we start taking an intimate look at each section of the budget and have budget work sessions devoted to that. And you can see that on this calendar. So we talk about the instruction of our students, we talk about the salaries and benefits, we talk about athletics, we talk about maintenance and building operations, and in-depth look at each section of the budget. We're now at the point of this budget where we have proposed a final budget on April 20th. The final budget was approved by the school board at that time, and we'll be looking to do the final approval. There has to be 2 approval sections from the school board on a budget, so the second one will be on June 1st. This is again a quick snapshot of what that budget process looks like. We really focus the budgets at the building levels and at department levels, and we basically start with a clean slate and say, okay, what is needed for the next school year, in this case the 15-16 school year, and start from the ground up to see what the final numbers will be. The board sets the budget dates and the school board meeting dates in December. After that, the board starts to analyze the budget and we take a close look at what areas can be trimmed and what areas can be are required for the next school year. We also set a goal at that time with the school district, and the goal that was set this year was that we would keep a level funded budget minus the increase that would happen because of the PSERS increase this year. Whenever there's a PSERS increase, it's a percentage increase, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and half of that is reimbursed by the state. The other half falls on the burden of the local school district. So it's that half additional extra year that has to be accounted for. So, the preliminary budget. When we finally had all that information come in the December timeframe and prepared the preliminary budget for the school board in the January-February timeframe, this is what we were looking at. We had a state revenue that was pretty much static. At that point, we didn't know of any increases. We were basically planning for a flatline budget from the state. The federal revenue, we had a decreasing federal revenue for the past many years, and we have attributed that for this budget as well. So we decreased that by 2.24%. Looking at the real estate tax increases to make this budget work, the act limit was at 502,000. To make this budget work as it stood without making any reductions or any cuts was at 535,000. We'd have to raise taxes to make this be a complete level funded budget from what it was last year to this year without any cuts. This was our preliminary expenditure, so where does our money go out the door? Here are the major issues to attribute to that $535,000. Mandated retirement increase. So we have a 21% increase from last year to this coming year. And so what that means in actual percentages is that we have 21.4% of each salary of every school district employee going to go to the retirement system. This coming year is going to be 25.84%, almost 26% attributed to salary, from the salaries attributed to retirement. We also were looking at a medical plan increase from up 7%. The district participates in a consortium medical plan, so that means we partner with a bunch of other school districts in the county to try to get a better deal on a medical plan because there's more people in the plan. And we've done a pretty good job with that. 7%, while it's not ideal, is pretty average of what's going on in the companies, and in fact lower than some other major companies in the area. We also wanted to make sure we funded the maintenance projects, and we'll talk about maintenance projects and long-term fiscal responsibility a little bit later on in this presentation. We also are we have a strong technology plan in our school district, and we wanted to make sure that is funded for many years to come because we feel that instructional technology is the key to moving forward for our students to better prepare them for when they graduate Brandywine. We also have a curriculum plan. The curriculum plan is on a 6-year rotation, and so every 6 years we reevaluate and buy new materials for the different subject areas. And then we always put in $200,000 of a cushion just in case something happens. We have money there to buffer that, and so we use fund balance or savings account to offset that. So that was our preliminary expenditure of where the money was going to go, and again looking at this back in January. This is what our preliminary budget looked like. We had the revenue of $30,000, expenditures going out of $30.8 million, and then a gap of $735,000. We used the fund balance to offset that. Again, I talked about that earlier, but that's a savings account used to offset if there would be an emergency. So we budget for the emergency of $200,000. We use our fund balance or savings account to offset that. So it really left us a shortfall of $535,000. When you look at the actual numbers, the Peters increase alone was $563,000. Salary increases based off the contracts was $350,000. So we started with that deficit of $913,000, and so that was a pretty big hurdle to overcome. As we went through the process, and again you saw the different meetings, and we did a close analysis of all the different factors that attribute to this budget. The administration with the business manager, all the administrators looked at this budget very carefully and tried to cut wherever we could while still maintaining the program, and that is the key piece. We wanted to maintain programs so our students still have the same opportunity while at the same hand being able to make sure that we were offering a program that was cost effective for our taxpayers. So in looking at this, we actually have one of the major issues that have happened with this revenue budget as we go into the final revenue process, the final budget approval process, was the state revenue. As everyone knows, Governor Wolf came in and has emphasized heavily his support for education, and in such has devoted a lot of money to education. Whether that goes through or not and what the legislators support or don't support will be yet to come. But we did look at this, and in reviewing this with the school board decided to use 3.95% increase of the state revenue to help and balance and use that as a part of our budget process. So as we go through this, what that would mean is that it would be 60% of the governor's proposed budget. Again, I said earlier, it'll be yet to see what happens with the legislators and what they do with the budget process, but we're feeling that something's going to happen, and that there is going to be an increase to education, and so we're banking on 60% of the governor's proposed budget to help in preparing the budget process. Talked about the federal revenue decreases earlier, and we held that at 2.24% as a decrease from the federal government, and then the real estate tax increase. Through all this process earlier, I talked about how much of a gap there was earlier, $900,000. We are looking at a no tax increase for this coming year. That's very exciting for us. We're very proud of this, and I'll talk about how we got to that in a minute. This is where the monies go. So you can see, as everyone knows, the local taxpayer has the burden. We don't have any businesses. It is really based off the residents here in the school district, and we're very keen to that. And so to come in with a zero tax increase again for a second year, it makes us so proud, and we're so glad we're able to help our taxpayers. 68.5% of this budget comes from the local businesses and taxpayers. There is only 30% of our budget that comes from the state. At the federal level, all the mandates, everything that comes down from the federal government, only 1.4% of that money actually comes from the federal government. We talked about the expenditures earlier and the increase to the retirement fund, and that still holds true. We're at 21.4% this year. Next year, we're going to be looking at 25.84%. Medical, we talked about the 7% increase and the medical consortium. It has actually reduced 1%, which is really good. It's down to only a 6% increase for the medical plan. And I talked about earlier about maintenance plan, instructional plan, and curriculum plan. Here's what a different pie graph of our expenditures looks like. So as you can imagine, a school district needs teachers, it needs staff to run. It is a people business, it's a service industry. And so 2/3 of this budget, as you can see from the purple and the burgundy color at the bottom, 2/3 of this budget basically are salaries and benefits. The rest is supplies, contracts, equipment, and those sort of things. But 2/3 is really based for the salaries and benefits to run the school district so we can teach the kids. Here's a closer look at what's actually impacting this budget. What's the driving factor to get a $900,000 deficit when we started the school year? What got us to that point, and how were we able to overcome that? So I talked about PISA earlier. This is a major issue, and as you can see here from this graph, that there is a 4% increase that's happened basically since the 2010 school year. Every year since 2010, we've had a 4% increase. That is basically a $500,000 increase just for PISA alone. Now, the state reimburses half of that money. So it still allows for a $250,000 gap from, if we would keep everything the exact same in the budget, nothing would change, and we just roll over the calendar year, use the exact same budget, exact same people, exact same everything, nothing changed, we would still be in the whole $250,000. If that was not accounted for and there wasn't any kind of change to buffer that, whether it's reductions or it's a tax increase, it compounds itself. So $250,000 in 2010, 2011, it's another $250,000, now we're at $500,000. The next year, 2012, now we're at $750,000, and so on and so forth. You get the picture. The concept here is that this has to be accounted for. We had to make reductions in staff, we had to make reductions in programs, we had to make all kinds of reductions in what we were doing to be able to buffer that $250,000 increase or jump every single year. If you look at this graph carefully, there's one more year where, when we get into the 2016-17 school year, where we have one more 4% jump or $250,000 jump. After that, while the rate of contribution is extremely high at 30% of of every person's salary, the very positive news is that it flatlines. This bell curve does not start to go back down until 2031. That's what the estimate is. But at least from the 2020 until 2031, that 10-year span, it pretty much holds steady at that 32% rate. It doesn't have major jumps where we have to come up with money to buffer that every single year. Here's some issues that are happening with the budget, with the pension crisis, and what's attributed to this. There is a $38 billion unfunded liability. What got us to that point? What got us to that point is back a few years ago, the legislatures approved an increase to all pension retirees that are part of this PISA system and the state system. They gave out more benefits. They gave out higher percentages. At the same time, right after they did that, the stock markets crashed. And so you put those two things together, the higher rate of contribution to the employees that are contributing, the stock market crashing, and it's created this turmoil of a $38 billion unfunded liability. There's a bunch of plans that are out there. There's hybrid plans where it would be a part of a 401k and also a traditional pension plan, which is it currently exists. Again, a lot of legislation, a lot of discussion, a lot of movement on this, but it'll take some time until something final comes out of this, and I believe that'll be at least the next year or so. The long-term debt. We spend about $3.5 million annually on debt. When you think of debt, think about the loan for someone's house. We're still paying from the high school project, which happened a bunch of years ago. We're going to be paying for the roofing and infrastructures that happened at the middle school and elementary school, things that had to get done to sustain our buildings. You can see by the shaded color graph that this debt is called a wraparound debt. So the green debt is still the remaining high school project. We have the 14-15, 15-16, 16-17, 17-18 school years left on paying for the high school. We've structured this debt so it's $3.5 million every year. It doesn't fluctuate wildly. It's always a set amount, and it's called a wraparound debt. So you pay a small amount up front until something drops off, like the high school, the green in this picture drops off. Then it picks up huge amounts that we're going to pay off on the orange debt. The yellowish gold one, again, you see that there's little amounts paid until that orange falls off, and then we pay off that yellowish gold one. The very positive news here is that in the 2022-2023 school year, basically before, except for $400,000, the school district is debt free. That is really, really an important aspect to keep track of. Again, 2022, 2023, we'll talk about that in a second. But the debt will be gone. We're very careful in our long-term planning to make sure that we don't have to go back in and take another loan out at that point. We're also watching the amount that we're putting out for the retirement system and what that's going to mean in terms of making sure that we're able to sustain our costs and be able to pay for that long-term. That's part of this process where we'll be out of the debt and we won't have to pay for $3.5 million at that point. So here's what this is looking like. This is a little bit of a confusing graph, but if you follow the graph here, the bluish green color is actually the expenditures, how much money the school district is going to put out. The greenish color at the top is the revenue, the money coming in. You can see at this point that there begins to have a separation in the 2016-17 school year where we're going to have to pay more than what we're able to bring in. There'll be more expenses than the amount of taxes or revenue able to come in. And that divide starts to get bigger as the years go. If you look at the bottom and you look at the red, you can see we talked about earlier about the PSERS and that bar graph of how the PSERS still has a bunch of big jumps to make, and then it caps itself out at that 31-32% for the next 10 years. That red line is the amount in millions of dollars that we will be paying to have the PSERS fund. So you can see it's at 1.99 at the 13-14 school year, 14-15 is 2.5, 15-16 is going to be at 3.16. So even though we're reducing staff and we have less of the amount that we're going to be paying because of people, the percentage is still increasing, so the amount of dollars going out is still increasing. So that graph continues to go up, and you can see by the time this projection ends in 2022, we're at 4.5 million compared to the 1.99 in 13-14 school year. The bluish line is the amount of fund balance or savings account. So at this point, if you put all the savings together for the entire school district, there is $8 million of savings. That's categorized in a bunch of different ways. There's fund balance that's designated, there's undesignated, there's all different kinds of ways of looking at fund balance, but that's the total amount of fund balance. As this process goes, and that gap, again, if you look back at the blue, green, and the green at the top, that divide starts to happen of how much money we're able to bring in versus how much our expenses are, and again attributed back to the red line, the increased amount of PSERS, we're going to have to start using the savings account, using the fund balance. And so you can see, because of that, proportionally, that blue line, that fund balance, starts to go down. Again, looking really carefully, if you look at the 21-22 school year, we're basically down to $680,000 or 0.68 million. That starts to go back up slowly in the 2022-2023 year, because we're going to be able to repay or put money back into our savings account because we'll no longer have to pay for the loans of the school district. That will be gone, the debt will be gone, and we can start using that money we were paying for debt to repay ourselves and build back up our savings account. Here's a projection of our enrollment. In the 2004 school year, we had basically 2,000 students. there was a big influx of students that came through our school district, partially because of some developments that were built in the late 90s, 2000s, and a lot of that development has stalled because of the crash in the housing market and some other economic factors, and as a result, you can see our enrollment decline. And so at this point, right now, we're at 1495 students. We're anticipating for next year 1488. So a slight decline. The reason why it's not a major one is that we have a small graduating class this year. Our typical graduating class has been around 150. This year it's at 120. But then the following couple years it's back up to 150. The issue is that those graduating seniors at 150, we only have 110-ish students coming in kindergarten. So the offset of those 40 kids every year is what's attributing to this enrollment decline. We're anticipating about a flat line of 1350 students. Here's another look at that and what that means. And again, this adds a little bit of the percentage of decline. There's always a decline that's happened since that 2004 year. This now shows in the percentage area, and you can again see the difference here because this is the specific numbers in terms of the grade level and how many kids are attributed. So if you look at the red, which is this year, and the blue, which is next year, we have 100 students in kindergarten right now. If you look at the bottom, which is 12, we have 112 students that are graduating. Next year, we have 155 that will be graduating, and we're anticipating only 105 coming in. So there's your offset in this next year, what we're anticipating, which is a 50 student offset. This next slide shows how we were able to make the recommendations of cuts to be able to get us to the point of having a 0% tax increase. And so I'm going to go back to what we talked about earlier, which was setting the goal for the school district. We originally set the goal that there was a over $500,000 increase for PSERS. Half of that is the district cost, so $250,000 increase for the school district. That was our goal, keeping everything a flat line in budget minus that $250,000 increase. We know we had, looking at that original slides when we talked about the major gaps that we had at the beginning of the school year, we had that $500,000 gap with contracts and with PSERS and everything else combined. So we had that big gap to overcome, and this is how we were able to accomplish that. The curriculum instruction budget. There's $7,700 that was reduced out of the curriculum instruction budget. That was a direct reflection on the Virtual Academy. The Virtual Academy had computers budgeted for next year to be able to support their program. We were able to reduce that amount and purchase the computers this year and do an exchange this year to be able to reduce that amount of money. Special education. When we go through this process and look at every single line item to make sure that everything is crisp, that there's nothing that we're able to cut, that we take a look at all the expenditures that are planned for the next school year. One of the things we came across was an $1,800 amount of money in special education for gifted instruction curriculum, which was also a duplicate and a budgeted for in the curriculum instruction budget. It's a small amount of money in terms of a $30 million budget, $1,800, but one that we felt that needed to be taken. It's illustrative of the fact of how close we look at this budget and all the different line items to make sure that there is no duplication, so that every single item is analyzed and what can be reduced, what can be further pinpointed. The principal's budgets. So we reduced $2,500 from the principal's budget, and that was a reflection on the amount of monies that were planned for next year for a project which we were able to do this year and accomplish that same project. Other instruction, we budget money every year for our students that go to the technical school, the Berks County Technical School. When that budget came out, we anticipated a $10,000 higher budget. When the final numbers came in and they approved their budget, it came in $10,000 less. So because of that $10,000 less, from the $1.261 million to the $1.251 million, we were able to reduce that BCTC budget by $10,000. Maintenance operations, we were able to save $72,000. That was a pretty good chunk of money. And what we were able to do was purchase a truck this year instead of next year. And so that reduced part of that $72,000. That was part of that reduction. And the other thing we were able to do was, there's a bridge that connects at the end of the middle school property and goes over to the baseball field. We were planning to completely redo that bridge. In discussions with the school board, we decided to, let's see if we could get an Eagle Scout or someone from the community willing to do that, and we found an Eagle Scout right away that was able to do that. So that person is going to replace all the decking, all the side rails, everything on that bridge as part of his project, and so we were able to save $16,000 on that plan to replace that bridge. Part of our maintenance plan is to have a clear, articulated plan on an annual basis that we're going to replace different pieces or to be able to maintain our school projects. So that way we don't get into a point where we have to take a huge loan out because we've negated our properties. It's kind of like a house. If you don't do anything with your house, eventually you're going to have to change and fix a whole bunch of stuff, and you're going to have to take a loan because you're not going to be able to afford it. The other option is you keep up with it along the way, and you don't have to take that major loan out. And that's the approach we're taking with the school district. We're keeping up to date with our maintenance projects, and we're making sure that we have a clear plan, a 10-year plan of what has to get done along that way so that everything can be replaced. We spend about $500,000 a year just on normal operation things to fix up the school, so we don't get to a point of having a major loan come down in the future. Going back to reductions, the central admin piece, we have a software that we use for tracking all the money going out in the school district, a finance software. There's an upgrade to that. We budgeted a little bit high. When the final quote came in, it was $2,000 less, so we took that $2,000 savings. In terms of athletics, there was a $3,000 reduction in athletics, and that is primarily because of transportation. We used to contract a lot of our buses. Because we have declining enrollment and less students playing sports, we're able to use our own internal vans, and coaches drive the vans to the games with the kids, and that is a $3,000 savings. The final area is salaries and benefits. This is a pretty big chunk of money. It's $217,000 and a little bit more money for the reduction in salaries. What we're doing there is we have 5 retirements that occurred this year. 2 of them pretty much had to be replaced if we were going to maintain program. We're not about cutting program here in the school district. We're about keeping the same program for our kids, but offering it in a more efficient way of providing that program so that it doesn't cost the taxpayers as much. So those 2 positions, one was an art position and the other one was a course position in the high school. If we would not have replaced those, it would have devastated the program because there would have been no art teacher and there would have been no course teacher. The other position that we are going to replace out of those 5 retirements is a special education position which needed to be replaced. 2 positions which will not be replaced is a middle school reading specialist that was also associated with Title I or federal money, and again you saw earlier how the federal money is decreasing, and so because of that we're not going to replace that position. And the other one is a special education position. When we looked at the entire special education teachers in the entire district, we were able to make some changes, some shuffle people around, and that was able to account for not having to replace for 1 special education position. The other reduction made was a nursing position. Currently there's 3 school nurses in the school district, 1 at the elementary school, 1 at the intermediate and middle school, and another one at the high school. We decided to take the elementary nurse, who also has an aide, take that position and replace that with 2 part-time RNs. And in doing such, we'll have one of the school nurses, either from the high school or middle school, still come over and monitor those 2 part-time RNs. We will have the same amount of coverage for our students. We will not reduce the scope of what's available in terms of health coverage. There will always be a nurse in the elementary school. It just will not be a certified school nurse anymore. It will be 2 part-time RNs. They will overlap their day. They will have a time from 10 o'clock in the morning until about 1:30 in the afternoon when they will overlap. And the reason for that overlap is that when we did an analysis of when kids come down to the nurse's office as well as when medication is given, it's most heavily given during that lunchtime period. So we felt it was appropriate to have that overlap at that time. And so again, it'll be the same coverage, it'll be the same, there'll always be a nurse available for elementary students, but it'll be offered, that support will be done by 2 RNs. Again, looking at alternate ways to provide the same operation, same program for our kids, but it added financial savings to the taxpayers. So all those amount of savings and reductions come out to $317,000. We talked earlier about the governor's budget. We had originally planned no increase. We did, in following the governor's budget and hearing legislation, we're looking at adding 60% of the governor's budget. We feel that's a fairly comparable amount to add. We believe that there is going to be something. So by adding 6% of the budget of the governor, that increase at the state revenue level, plus the $300,000 reduction, those two combined give us that $500,000 that we needed to be able to come in with a 0% tax increase. So we are very excited to offer that 0% tax increase. It is a long, hard process of our business manager, our administration, the staff here in the school district, the school board of directors spending an exorbitant amount of time listening and analyzing and coming up with recommendations for the administration. All those factors working together, including the community that was present at these meetings, to come together to come up with a budget that is a 0% tax increase budget, and that is a great accomplishment. We always are open to suggestions, and we have a email link that is set up. It's on the school district budget page, but here's the link specifically. It's budgetsuggestions@bhasd.org. Again, always open to hear suggestions if you have anything else you'd like to offer us. I'd like to close by first thanking you for spending time listening to this presentation, your interest in the school district, your interest in the budget process, your interest in what's going to happen with the future planning for the school district. I'm very excited they're able, again, to offer that 0% tax increase this year. While I don't think it's always going to be able to be a possibility, it is a great goal and a great accomplishment this year. I'm also excited about the long-term sustainability of our school district. It's not about this year's budget or next year's budget. It's about where we're going to be in 10 years and that long-term sustainability. I want the best for our school district. Our school board of directors want the best for our school district. Our administration, our teachers, all our staff want the best for this school district. So it is part of a responsible look at where we're going to be financially in the long term. We have a great district. I thank you for your support all the time, not in the budget process, but at all points in the year. We have kids that are doing phenomenal things in our school district. We have staff that are a great staff that have led our kids down a wonderful educational path. I'm so proud of our school district. I'm so proud of our students. It is wonderful to see the great things they're walking away from Brandywine when they graduate and able to accomplish because of what we've been able to foster in them over the years. And that is all a recognition of a support of our staff, of our school board directors, and of our residents who are willing to commit and support this great program that we are here able to offer in our school district. So I thank you again for the support of our district. We have a great district, and I'm so proud of everything we're able to accomplish. Thank you.